So my name is Chuba, and I'm
Chine.
and this is Chine. We are the co-founders of Akanka. And Akanka is a design studio on a mission to design peace, joy, and happiness into everything possible. And we are biophilic designers. And what biophilic designers mean is that we design using nature as a base as an inspiration for everything that we design. And in doing so, I think it's an important mission to therefore ensure that we are spreading nature everywhere that we can. So I think the why we specifically chose this topic was simply because, as everyone knows, uh, the one thing that the world needs right now are more sustainable solutions, especially with respect to the environment. And we, as human beings, we have cities and we live in cities. A lot of us live in cities, and a lot of those cities have become concrete jungles or concrete spaces without any form of life or, without any form of life, really. And for us, I think it's particularly key that what the future looks like, are spaces that we can transform from concrete spaces into natural spaces, really. Spaces that have life, spaces that have plants, spaces that have trees, and green cities are really that future for us because they also come with a lot of advantages, right? So they improve the environment.
They give us air.
Yeah, so they reduce air pollution, they reduce the crime rates, they boost productivity, and there's a sense of peace and joy and happiness that also comes with being surrounded by nature, plants of nature. So for us, it was very important that we start thinking about how do we design growing cities like Abuja, right, and saturated cities like Lagos to be greener. And I think the session is really going to be a collaborative sprint session that will help us identify solutions. But I think even before we start that, just as a teaser to help or as a starting point for people, so they understand. So we have something to work with. We have some baselines to work with. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to walk people through what our experience was like designing our studio or turning a concrete space into a garden, really. And that experience started last year. It started a year ago. And a year ago, we moved into a new studio that was a concrete space. So for us, it was a case of if you had a concrete space, what do you do to turn it into a space that has life, right? So that was the journey that we embarked on, turning it into a space that had life. And that process, I think we shared the last time we had a session with AFRICANXT. So we're just going to share that again, just so that that's at the back of people's mind before we then delve into on Akanka and what we do.
So we are Akanka, a traditional design studio co-founded by the Ezekwesili. That's us. We design everything for peace, joy, and happiness. And currently, we're designing brand identities, brand names, packages, editorials, websites, mobile apps, products, from woodwork to glassware to metalwork, mobile photography, videography, sound, interiors, landscapes, biophilic art, data visualization, design thinking, cultures, communication, productivity, health, and mindset. So it's a constant growing list and with every of this single thing that we design, peace, joy, and happiness are always the intentions.
Yeah. And we'll skip our philosophy for now, but we'll come back to it, I think, later on. But I just want us to delve into this thing, right? So for us to design, we follow these principles in designing. We call it the framework of intention. And this framework of intention also came about as a result of gardening. So we're going to come back also to these principles, because these principles are also going to guide us when we go through the design thinking process as well. So the first step is really to slow down and observe. And this was the studio when we moved into the space, pure concrete patio, as you can see. No life, nothing, just concrete. This is the other side of the studio, also just pure concrete as well. then we proceeded to
we needed to make beds because it was essential for us to be able to grow these plants. They needed to grow in a set of beds that could host them. When you're dealing with pure concrete, the first thing you want to be thinking about is how do you host the plants that are there? How are you able to get the plants in basically a bucket of some sort that can allow them grow? Yeah, in order for us to do that, we started by seeing the bricks that were, interlocks that were thrown out by our neighbors on the street. So we took those interlocks from the street and we stacked them to the side and we plastered them. So now there were beds for us to be able to grow the plants that we needed to grow.
Yeah. So one of the first principles that that you see even when we design is that we use everything that we have, whatever it is that we have, we use it to design, and that's a very key aspect when you're designing from a sustainability point of view. It's important that you are examining the things that you have around you, how you can use them. So when we started doing this, we thought that we needed to buy buckets. So basically like those plant buckets. But we quickly realized that we had way too many plants. And if we had to buy plant buckets, it would probably cost us about, it would require about 200 of them, which was really expensive. So instead, we changed our minds and said, okay, what can we use to do this? For us, we're very fortunate, right? Because as Chine said, we had a neighbor who dumped his interlocks outside on the road. And so we just said, oh, wow, this is free interlock. So we took the interlocks, right? And instead of using it on the ground, we used it as the bed. So you can see that we just cemented the interlocks together and that's created the beds for the plants. So that's a very important thing, right? Before you even start, a lot of people start by thinking to themselves, how much do I have to spend to do this? I think before you do that, the first question you should ask is, what do I have around me that I can use? I think one of the major things people will tend to find around them is, for example, used tires. That tends to be everywhere around. So as long as you can have used tires or something like that, you have something that you can work with, or anything that can hold plants or soil, you have something to work with. So the last part was really taking responsibility, and that required, and just linking all the way back as well to a conversation about using what you had. We had all these rocks outside on the street side, so we just took all the rocks and brought it in, and then it just added a bit more personality to the space.
Nature.
Well. And nature, yes, because it's all connected to nature. So you can see down the line, I think maybe a few months later, you can see how the plants are already growing. And then later on, we
got broken tiles, and we just made art out of them. So we took the broken tiles and we asked ourselves, how can we make something that speaks to what we created, to the garden, and then we used those to make flowers and plants and streams. Basically, we replicated nature across the ground using the tiles that were already broken.
Yeah, so it's always the same principle of what do you have that you can use. Broken tiles is something that a lot of people find. I mean, you buy it, but it's way cheaper than interlocks, and it's way cheaper than any other way of doing the ground, for example. So those are just some of the ways that we are very keen on using things around us to create something new. Months down the line, you can see how all these plants started to grow. And the beautiful part about it is a lot of the plants that you also can find, especially if you're in Lagos, for example, and we'll talk more about that, but if you're in Lagos, for example, it can be very difficult to, I mean, plants can seem really expensive, really expensive. But I think the one thing that will happen is as you delve more into plants, you will find that there's a lot of plants that you can just maybe snap a twig out of it, and then you just put it in the ground, and it's going to grow. Or you will find it out on the ground for free. Like, for example, this plant is usually around, well, not in Lagos, but if you're in other states, you find them for free around. Then down the line, right, a few months later, you can see how all the gardening that we started during lockdown season, and this all happened during lockdown season, right? So that's pretty much a year ago, transformed into a really green space. So you can see that we went from pure concrete to a space that feels like it literally was always like this, which isn't the case. But it's what happens when you're intentional about designing with nature. So I think for us, right, it's then very important that thanks. I think we're just gonna leave that slide so people enjoy that. But yeah, it's why it feels like it's Singapore. Thank you, Nana.
Yeah.
It does feel like it's it does feel like it's Singapore when you're in this
Yeah.
place. And that picture, I think these pictures were just taken a few minutes before we started this presentation. So it is quite literally like this right now, and it's what can happen across Nigeria really if people are intentional about it, about designing their space.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all that's really needed is the ability to imagine and deciding that to put effort into that imagination, because that's all it required for us to be able to take that concrete space and turn it into this. Was just saying, see, we can imagine that this space can host plants. Now, if we can host plants, what do we have to do? We have to just take responsibility for it. And by being intentional, it allowed us the ability to be able to take a space that people would not have envisioned this being, and turning it into a space that looks like this.
Oh, I love everyone's question. Without a good luck fortune, yes. So without that one, we definitely would have used tires instead.
Yeah,
tires are a really really good way
Yeah.
to do it. Funny and actually, the interlocks ran out eventually. So and we wanted to also still create more beds, but this time for farming, just for food crops, for tomatoes, for potatoes, sugarcane, corn, whatever it was. And we didn't have any interlocks anymore. But what we could find with tires, you will typically, especially if you're in Lagos, you will find tires. You'll find a lot of discarded tires. Like you can legit hire someone. Oh yeah, you eat from the garden as well. Yes.
Yeah.
We've grown yams here as well.
Plantain.
And plantain as well. I don't know if I added a slide of the plantain, but there's plantain here as well. Growing from the garden itself. So yes, but I think what you can no, it's not cosmetic. There's actually plantain growing from it. What you usually can do is tires are very very handy quickly, and they're a very good way as well, because most of the time what happens with tires is tires get collected and burnt or used to burn stuff, which is
For the
terrible.
environment,
It's terrible for the environment. But you use tires that are already gone, and then you convert them into bed. All you have to do is to stack the tires, like 1-2 tires, and then you just get a bunch of soil, and you have yourself like a proper bed, and it will grow just like it grows anywhere else. We have a plantain tree growing from this, so it really doesn't take that long. The bamboo, ooh, it's what type of bamboo is this?
Depends. Are they asking about the bamboo that's growing, the bamboo plant? If it's the bamboo plant, it's the small type. I don't know about the small type that goes over the southern Nigeria, but it's a small type.
Yeah, it's a small type.
Okay, the plant. Yeah, it's a small type. This doesn't get huge.
Yeah, and the other thing about plants is plants will grow according to whatever you put them in.
Mm-hmm.
So they grow according to constraints. That's the other thing about plants that's also very very important to learn as well.
Yeah. So if it's in a small bed, the plant is going to grow small. But if it's in a large bed, if it has enough space, then it's going to, and it's not doesn't have competition, then it's going to grow really huge. So they're really aware of the space that you put them in, and will adjust accordingly. So it always helps to know what you're expecting from the plant by by the amount of space and the amount of resources that you give into it.
Yes. Great. Glad to hear that, Nana. I think what we're then going to do is, now that we've shown you this, we're then going to talk about because what happens is in taking care of plants and nature, they teach you a bunch of lessons, and these lessons are very important lessons for life. And in the process of doing this over the last year, we learned a lot from that. And that has been very key also to, do we have a fancy irrigation system? Sorry, I just get distracted by the questions. I love the questions. No, we don't have a fancy irrigation system.
Nah, we just water.
we just water it. You just water it like with a hose. Just get a hose, get a tap, and then just do the water.
And that's during the dry season. During the rainy season, it just takes care of itself.
Yes, only during the dry season do you water. So I think what we're going to then do is talk about what lessons we've learned in that process of doing this over the last 1 year. And then I think instead of doing the typical design thinking session format, I think what we can then also do is in talking about these lessons and the framework, we can also then I think people can then just contribute in the chat how they would think about doing it in wherever they are, or what that looks like, so we can walk through it step by step. So the first step, right, and then just going back to the presentation. The first step, right, is that we slow down. And in slowing down, what we mean by slowing down really is slowing down enough to observe. So if you're familiar with the design thinking process, you will find that the first step of the design thinking process is really, they say empathy, but another way to see it is observation. Just observation, so observing. And in observing, you will find that wherever you are, you have to then think about the amount of space that you have, because the amount of space that you have, of course, will determine whether, like, how much gardening you can possibly do in a particular area. But observing is very key, right? So if you're at home now, what space do you have? Is it the front of the house? Do you have space inside the house? Those are things that you have to think about. But in this case, right, just really tying it all the way also back to the larger conversation. The larger conversation really is, how do you think about different ways of designing a greener city? So in designing a greener city, right, there's multiple places that you can start from. You can start from home. You can start from your estate, right? So if you live in an estate, that's also a very good place to start, because what can happen is you can also bring in other people who might be interested in gardening as well, and then you make it a community thing where you grow crops together. You can start from schools. So for example, you can talk to schools about what it looks like to start some form of gardening activity that the students can take part in. You can start at work as well. So workspaces, what does it look like if other colleagues of yours want to also join in and start a garden at work? Well, it depends on your workplace. So some certain workplaces in Nigeria, I don't know about that, but I think in some other places, people are very amenable to it. Your churches as well, or religious institutions, are also good places to start. So now that we're clear on the places that you can do this in, or even parks as well. But to be fair, I don't know about parks in Lagos, because parks in Lagos are a bit tricky. But there's all these different places that you can potentially use, right? So that's the first step, right? Slowing down to see these places is the first step. Then the second step is really giving gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, and giving gratitude, what giving gratitude allows you to do is that it allows you really see what you've observed. Because it's one thing for you to observe, to see the spaces that you can put the plants in. But giving gratitude allows you to see what you can use in order for you to get those plants growing. Because what you will find is across every step of life, when you want to do something, if you slow down enough to give gratitude, you will find that life will actually bring what it requires for you to get for you to get things done. So, for example, we wanted to create this botanical garden, and we had to slow down to observe, to really look around and say, okay, what do we have that could help us do this? And in doing that, we saw the bricks. But it wasn't enough that we just saw the bricks. It was that we had to say, well, these bricks can be used in this particular way. That's giving gratitude. That is being able to see the bricks in a different dimension from what they're normally used for. And you'll find that when you slow down enough and you look and you begin to actually really look around you, what is required for you to create your garden, or for you to have for you to convert your place to a greener to a greener sort of vibe is there. But the only way you can see it is if you actually really slow down to be grateful for what is around you. The moment you're observing a lot more, the moment you're thinking about how things can be used differently, that's the moment you begin to see what is in place that can help you achieve that.
Yeah, yes, that gratitude is very key to seeing what you're surrounded by, what you can use. And then with respect to the design thinking process, right? The next step on the design thinking process, who can tell me what the next step on the design thinking process is? So we talked about observation. What's the next step? I think I want us to have this be, what do you call it, to be interactive. So in the chat, yes, I mean,
yeah,
take responsibility for the next step for our own framework. But I was asking about the design thinking process. So the first part is to empathize or to observe. Then the second step is to do what? The second step is to, if no one can answer, I'll answer that one. The second step is to define. I know people are going to Google to type what is the design thinking process. The second step is to define. That's what you do in the second step of the design thinking process, and and that step is very important because that step ties to what we said about giving gratitude, right? When you have to define, what it is that you want to see. And what it is that you want to see in this case is a space that is greener. It's a space that has nature. It's a space that has life. It's a space that has plants, right? And you have to define that. And it's a very key part of designing is for you to start thinking about the future that you want to see. But for you to think about the future you want to see, you have to define that future. A lot of times, people get stuck because they spend too much time thinking about what it is that they don't want to see, which isn't helpful for you at all. Because if all you're doing is complaining about this place just always feels like concrete, there's nothing that's growing here. This place is so lifeless. That's all you're going to see is more lifelessness, right? But that defining is very important because for us, we had to define what it was that we wanted to see. We saw a concrete space, right? But what we saw in the future, what we defined it to be was we wanted to have a botanical garden. And that definition is very important when you are designing. So the defining is very important. Define according to the future that you want to see, not the present that you see, the future that you want to see. That's how you problem solve. And this cuts across everything as well. So across creating a botanical garden from concrete, or building out your business, or having a relationship that works with your partner, it cuts across everything. Really, it's to define from a place of intention. Really. So yeah, do you want to say anything about the defining?
Yeah, that was good.
Awesome. So then the next step in the design thinking process is ideating, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to jump into the ideating aspects of it. So ideation is very important because ideating helps you. Ideating really requires you on experimenting, and it's such a mindset to have because that mindset transcends taking care of plants or having your garden. It also affects everything. It affects raising your child. It affects having a good relationship with your partner. It affects building out a business. Ideating really requires you to experiment. And when you are always in a state of experimentation, you let go of the fear of failure. Because I think one of the major issues that people have when growing out a garden is that they say, but I don't know how to take care of a plant. And like I killed a plant once or twice, and I have a black thumb. Which, if you say that, don't say that again because there's no reason to have this. There's no reason to call it a black thumb. You're black, anyways. So that letting go of the fear, right, of killing plants is very key because we can tell you for free that that's part of the learning process.
It is. We've killed plants.
We've killed plants.
But the way to see failure is see it as data. What failure does is it informs you about how to get things right. So when things fail, when a plant dies, ask yourself the question, why what happened here? Was it not enough lights, not enough water, not in the right place? Always see failure as data. The moment you begin to see it as that, it becomes much less daunting. It just becomes okay. Now, good. I can try again, and I can try again. And the more you try, the more you're just moving things here and there, the more you're learning from all that failure, is the more you're increasing your probability towards success.
Yes, because I mean, so for one, we yeah, we kill plants. I mean, sometimes so whether you get a plant and then you wouldn't be sure whether it needed enough sun,
Yeah.
or too little sun, or sometimes I think we would see certain images that we took in the past, and then we'd see a plant maybe inside the house, and we'd start laughing because we'd be like, there is no way that what we know now that this plant will survive inside the house
No
because
way.
there's just no sunlight, not enough sunlight for it to survive. And we can tell you a list of plants that work well for indoors and the ones that will be better off outdoors. Everyone says I have amassed plenty data. Yeah. But make sure that data is only useful when you then make the next decision you make is helpful or is useful.
Yeah.
Or you then stop killing plants. So as you can tell from the garden, we stopped killing plants because we learned over time what it required to take care of the plants. So that ideation part is very important. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to pause now. I believe, and I'm so sorry to I'm so sorry to the AFRICANXT folks. I believe we're supposed to use what do you call it, the platform to do this. But I think what we can do is make use of what we have and use the chat to do this. But what we want to do now is talk through potential ideas that people see in terms of turning a city greener. What would you do if, for example, you became and we'll do it from two places. We'll do it from as an individual and also as a government official, right? Or as a governor. If uh, if you are if you're the governor of Lagos, for example, what decisions would you make to make the place greener? So just write it out in the chat and then send it, and then we can talk about it. So this is basically our ideation process right now. Think about any ideas that you have. What would you do? What would you encourage? So that so that we basically created a greener environment. Okay, while people are doing that, we will answer everyone's question. No, we actually never used chemical fertilizers in this place, or any non-environmentally friendly solutions.
Yeah. So the only thing that we use here is mulch, and what that is basically leaves and debris and vegetable matters from our kitchen. We're always taking that and recycling it into the ground, so it's sustained, in an environmentally friendly way. There's no waste, but there's also no chemicals.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, okay. Thank you for letting us know that, because I think for us, what we usually like to do, right, is we like to slice and dice our Q&A sessions into our session itself, so that way we're not just talking and then people are, So if it's possible for participants, if it's possible for them to, if you want to ask a question using your audio and video, please just wave as Okoya said, and then you'll enable that so you can do it. Designated green spaces for families to enjoy. Yes.
Yes. I think we've talked about that before. The creating parks in every local government.
Yes. I've forgotten what country it was. I was just reading this last week. I think we were reading it last week. But there's a country that has, I think they have for every. Yes, we are back. We disappeared for a few seconds. Can everyone hear us? Yeah, we're back. MTN decided to just drop us all of a sudden. So yeah, well, we're back. Yes, video is back. Almost all parks are gated over here. Yes, that's what we said. Unfortunately, in Lagos, almost all parks are gated in Lagos, which is a shame. But I think one of the things that you can do, right, is if the parks are gated, then the next question is what can you use? And usually the space that you have is a good space to start with. In terms of your compound, for example, what does it look like to use your compound? We've seen a couple of places in Lagos where people have legit just used outside of the house or just by the sides of the walls or just around the parking lot as a way to garden. Concessions for companies that commit to making their companies greener with the defined regulation of what being a green company means. Yes, that's also another great way of doing it, right? So how do you basically use the incentives? Really, incentives are a great way of doing it because if you have a clearly stated list of things that are possible, then what you can do is you can say you get a tax concession if this is the amount of greenery you introduce into your space or into your compound or into your office area. That's a really solid way of doing it. And then Falake says, but then again, I think people need to learn how to treat green spaces. That is a very good point. Very great, very, very good point, because there's a lot of green spaces that you also see even right now that people don't treat very well. And that's also because there's an absence of education in terms of teaching people what it is to properly dump their waste. An absence of education and also an absence of infrastructure. So supplying those two, I think, make it possible to do so. I think one of the other ways that we're talking about, now that we're talking about education, is what does it look like for us to put together a manual, basically, right? So what does it look like? And this is us coming back to the individual level. If you had to, and the truth is, most of the time, Lagos State or Abuja is not going to, well, not with this kind of government, they're not going to decide to take care of the environment. I think it always comes back to the last point of the framework, which is take responsibility. And that taking responsibility will only start with each and every one of us individually. So if each and every one of us individually is taking responsibility for the immediate vicinity around us, then it's easier for us to do it. And yes, government needs to see the bottom line. And there's a very clear bottom line, as you said. The clear bottom line in this case, right, is what would it look like if, imagine that we're able to you saw us turn this place from concrete into somewhere that looks like Singapore. And all we just did was we just introduced plants. Yeah. That was it, just plants, And so you can imagine what it would look like if a lot of spaces around Lagos that looks like concrete were turned into this. The immediate monetary incentive that you can find out of this, as Ebuja said, is that you pretty much can turn it into a tourist space. That's the immediate incentive. Yeah. The other incentive, I think, for government as well is just the research that crime rates fall drastically when a place is filled with nature. It just drops drastically. So there's multiple arguments that can be presented, or multiple ways that I think can be presented for governments to see it. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things that Nigerians have learned a lot is to not necessarily rely on government for you to not necessarily rely on government for you to get anything done. The first place to rely on is usually ourselves. I mean, a lot of Nigerians provide their own electricity, your water, your roads, your everything, right? I think what's then helpful is taking on that responsibility of saying, what does it look like for us to just make or bring in a lot more nature into a space itself? So nature is one way that we can, and taking care of it ourselves is one way we can do so. So I think having a manual basically that helps people figure out what's the first step I need to take. If I was looking to go into turning my space into a natural space, what's the first step I need to take, right? And putting together that manual is very key. And putting together that manual at the end of the day, I think is a responsibility that we've decided to take on ourselves in sharing the story, which is
what are the different ways, step by step, that you can take, depending on how much space that you have and the things that you need to look out for. So if you need to look out for lights, you think about the lights in the space. The lights in the space will dictate what you plant. If you need to think about how much water that you can possibly provide, because in many places, water isn't something that, I mean, apart from the rainy season, water isn't something that you have to pay for and that people will buy, right? So what does it look like to then be able to think around the kind of plants that you have that don't require a lot of water, for example? So those kind of plants are the ones that you plant. So having the list of that is very important, right? Thinking around the soil, that's also important. And I guess Chine can talk about what it looks like for us to put together like really soil that really works.
Yeah, so sorry, I got distracted by the question. But prayer doesn't just mean planting grass. It's grace of body if you have genetics constantly run that negates the effect of the greenery. Well, that's true. I suppose another way to see it is that having the plants there actually negates the effect of the pollution of the generator. It's better than not having the plants there. But certainly, just being able to minimize the amount of pollution that's been generated by, especially noise pollution that's been generated by the generator is a good start, because it's good to have greenery around, but you don't really get to enjoy it if your mind is just being clouded by noise.
By generator.
By generator. Yeah.
And the smoke, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's the thing, right? At the end of the day, one of the things, and you're right, it has to be a hand and hand partnership with citizens and government. I think the one thing that's helpful is it's only possible for that partnership to happen between citizens and government if citizens as a collective are united in that intention.
Yeah, taking responsibility.
So if citizens as one are taking responsibility, then it's easier. So you can imagine that, for example, you start gardening and your neighbor all of a sudden sees your garden and they're just like, oh wow, this looks very beautiful. How can I start my own? And then you teach them, or then you show them how to start their own garden. And then before you know it, they start their own garden. And then, you have your house and the other neighbor's house looking really good, or having like a nice patch of land that looks like a beautiful garden. And then the next thing, the other person to say is, oh, this looks really good. What does it look like for you? Can you help me with this? And before you know it, right, we truly believe that it's possible for you to have a chain reaction where more and more people begin to see the importance of it. And that's the thing about nature, is once you start interacting with nature, it changes the way you think. It starts to make you see the world from a different point of view. And you start to see why it's important for you to approach life from a sustainable point of view and not trash things, right? Because now you understand it because you're taking care of nature. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the final step of taking responsibility really as citizens, because when you start there, it becomes infinitely easier for you to go as a collective to talk to the government, or for you to engage with the government. But if citizens are not doing it, government is going to be like, well, citizens are not doing it, so why are we disturbing ourselves to do this?
Because you also have an example to show too as well. Because it's always necessary. If you want to convince people, then you want to be able to show them that you've done the work too, as opposed to telling them, oh yeah, let's go do this thing, and they're like, well, you've not done anything. It always helps when you can say, look, this is what we've done, and we want to be able to do more of this. Then they have a frame of reference that they can understand, and it's always helpful to have that. So when we take responsibility, we basically give ourselves data to be able to show people, to convince them otherwise. So
yeah. So the other very helpful way of scaling solutions like this is also thinking about it from a food crop point of view, right? Because at the end of the day, the truth is, right now, if you're in Nigeria, the price of everything is jumping, skyrocketing. Tomatoes are getting expensive. Food is just getting expensive in general. So what does it, if you can cut down the amount that you're spending going out, or if you can basically create a sustainable cycle for yourself, then that's very helpful. So that's one of the ways that we believe that citizens can start to connect to nature, is really by showing them, by letting them know, see, you can get cheaper food if you took care of it yourself. Right? But it requires you taking on that responsibility of doing so. So that's a very clear step in terms of introducing people. But I think at the end of the day, the first step that needs to be taken is the education. If people are not educated on the importance of these things, then they don't understand it. If people don't understand the importance of why we should reduce the use of generators and improve light, or switch to more solar effective solutions, then it's going to be very difficult for governments in the long run to understand this or do so. I think at the end of the day, it always starts with the citizens demanding before government then shifts. It usually isn't the other way around. So citizens start first, and then other people do it as well. So yes, so if people have any questions, we're happy to answer your questions on plants, what plants work best, depending on where you are. What kind of soil should you be looking at? Typically, how frequently should you be watering? It will also depend on where you are. So I believe people like Nana are not in Nigeria. So, so depending on where you are, you should also be aware of the needs and the requirements of the plants that you're working with. So if you have any questions, I think just indicate, and you'll be able to come up and ask your question on video as well.
Or come through.
And everyone on this call is definitely welcome to Abuja.
Yeah.
If you're ever in Abuja, let us know, and you will get a free tour of the studio. So that's on the house. In Lagos, yes, we're looking at, and funny enough, one of the other ways that we're looking at doing this in Lagos is using VR, for example. How do you convince, if you're looking for one way to convince people? Can we take you on the mini tour? Oh, I guess we can do a mini tour, yes. If you're looking to convince people of what the future can look like, I think one of the things that helps is imagining what it looks like. Yeah, you know, like really imagining it is very helpful. So people want to be able to see it, right? And if they can see it, yes, we'll do a short recap. If they can see it, then it helps them. But one of the ways that they can see it, right, is so for example, VR. So that's one of the things that we're working on this year, going on into next year, is what does it look like to basically create a VR of what Lagos could look like if people took responsibility for making it green. If people and government took responsibility, then imagine bus stop parks, for example, that have a lot more greenery to them. What energy that would feel like, and what that would look like. Imagine. I don't know what other places exist in Lagos. I think Lagos people can talk about the kind of places that they want to turn green. So if Lagos people are interested in specific areas, in seeing what specific areas can look like, yes, the mindset reset. Yes, because one of the things that we've seen that is very important, that's very key as well, is that nature also actually helps reset that mindset. Just the presence of nature is very helpful in resetting the mindset, because many times, right, I think one of the major problems with Lagos is that with places like Lagos, you are surrounded by a lot of noise and concrete a lot of the time. So there's nothing that helps you slow down, because it's just concrete everywhere. But you can imagine what it would feel like if at least there was a little bit more greenery in Lagos. It resets people a bit more. So yes, it's so hot everywhere. There's concrete everywhere. And it's exactly why Lagos needs a lot more plants because it's hot in Lagos. It would cool Lagos down if Lagos had more plants. Unfortunately, I think the government is dedicated to cutting down more trees than.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the studio, for example, we don't have ACs here. There are no ACs in the studio. All we have is fan. And the reason why we can have that is because we have plants all around us. So the plants are AC.
Yes. So plants will definitely help in helping making Lagos better. I think there's some other questions that I saw. Oh yeah. Could we do a short recap of our background and the company? Yes, we can. So Chine, I'll leave the recap to you.
Okay, so that's Chuba, and this is Chine. We're twins, and we're biophilic designers. Our company designs everything, or at least we endeavor to design everything for peace, joy, and happiness. And in order for us to do that, we do that using what we call the framework of intention. And the framework of intention was derived after we spent the lockdown period turning our concrete patio into a botanical garden. In that process of gardening every day, we learned lessons from nature that lesson was to slow down, was to give gratitude and to take responsibility. Those steps to every action that you're taking, that we're taking, the end result of it is always a well-designed result. Essentially, it allows us to create the future that we want to see. Because to create the future you want to see, you have to be intentional. So as long as you're slowing down, giving gratitude and taking responsibility, as long as you're figuring out how to apply that to everything that you're doing, from communication to creating, whatever it is, you're bound to end up with a product or with a result that is designed for peace, joy, and happiness.
So yes, I hope that answered your question. I'm afraid to say your first name, but I feel like I'm going to get it wrong. Is that Raquel Wilson? Awesome. Yes. Yeah, I got that right. Good. So yeah, so that's really what we do. And for us, nature is the reason we can design across all the things that we design is simply because we pay attention to the lessons from nature. That's really it. Nature teaches us a whole lot of lessons, and these lessons are very instrumental. And we talked about the framework, for example, what we call the framework of intention, right? So slow down, give gratitude, and take responsibility. And you apply that to your life and to your mindset, you will find that it helps you. And then also, that's also a very helpful mindset. In terms of making cities greener, I think one of the first steps is to make people's mindsets better. Then if people's mindsets are better, people then can see people understand more and more why they want a greener city. It's easier to convince people when they understand why they want it than anything else. So that aspect of slowing down is helpful, especially for people in Lagos, right? And that can be very difficult, of course, because there's traffic, there's all of those things. So when you reach your place, you're rushing. But what we found is that the more nature that you integrate into a space, the more it helps you have a success and peace of mind. And the other thing about Lagos is you want to be able to get back home, for example, and feel like you are in paradise. You don't want to get back home and feel like it's just another, you spend the entire time in traffic and it's been concrete. Then you get back home and then it's more concrete. You want a life where you get back home and then it feels like there's some life around you and that surrounds you. So starting with your own area, I think we really suggest is a very instrumental way to beginning that step towards just a greener city and also just a greener mindset as well. So, what are the questions people have?
Have you heard of that?
Oh, how did you decide to name Yang.
So for context, Yang is a cat. She's very sleeping.
Yeah, she's sleeping. She's sleeping. But we did so because, I mean, she's two colors. She's dark gray.
Or basically black.
Yeah, she's like black and white.
White.
So black and white really is yin and yang. And when you combine that together, that's yang. So yes, I hope that answers the question. Let's see, what else again? Have you heard about model? We have, oh yes, like basically vernacular architect. Yes, vernacular architecture.
We talked about this yesterday.
Yes. That's a very, I think it's a very instrumental way of bringing back more sustainable structures. Because the truth is that one of the things that we do is we call ourselves neo-traditionalists, and what that means is we look into the past, find lots of inspirations from the past, and bring it into the future. And we do have a lot of play in Africa. And one of the things that we did a lot of is that we understood, and our ancestors understood, why it was important to build with what they had. Really, it was the same principle of using what you have. And the ability to use what you have was very key, because they then designed for a place that was theirs, not other people's place. You know, so you have nowadays, we have buildings that are built according to the European standards, right? And they are built according to places that are typically cold, but you live in a very hot place. So how are you building intentionally in a way that helps you can be very key. So if you're in Lagos, for example, there's a lot of places that don't have windows, or that have very small windows, or that have, I said neo-traditionalist, but nature traditionalist sounds like a good one too as well. But neo-traditionalist, NEO, like neo-colonial, but this time neo-traditionalist. But yeah, so when you have spaces that have small windows, for example, and then that are using, what do you call it, a whole lot, using air conditioning a whole lot, which is why you end up using AC generators a whole lot as well. Those are very unsustainable practices, but when you're able to think back to what we did in the past and how we designed, it can be very helpful. I think an example, and Chine can talk about this, is this window, for example. One of the things is, how do you create more space? You really just expand it so that you have more natural light coming into a space. And
yeah, when he says this window, so that's this window. When we moved into the studio, it was a small window, and we were like, nah, we don't want a small window.
Yeah, so we broke it and expanded it.
So it's really about thinking about how do you let in more nature? How do you let in more light? How do you let in a lot more natural air? And that's really a way of doing things when you're limited by your current situation. But the one thing that we can say about mud and in terms of clay and actually building is because we talked about it yesterday. We talked about how clay really allows for good regulation in terms of temperature, and how as a future way of building, it will be essential that as Africans we're figuring out how we're using and incorporating that back into how we do things. I think it's interesting that we call it vernacular architecture in its own way, when as a matter of fact it should just be default. But it's certainly something that we're thinking a lot about, especially as a company, as a design company. We're working on figuring out how to create and design spaces and cities that are in touch with who we used to be as Africans, and yeah, so it's a really good question. Down the line, I expect that there's going to be a lot more vernacular design, just given that the world is inevitably going to be moving towards a more sustainable future.
Yeah, and I love that you asked that, because also just because I think the more we connect with, and this is what we believe, the more we connect with who we were, before the colonial period, the more we see a lot of things that we were sort of misled. We start to see where we're misled. So for example, right, it's unfortunate that it's very unfortunate that that when you come to a place that's green, right, that the first thing people say is, oh, there's a white person live here, or there's an Oyibo man live here, or an Oyibo woman live here. It's unfortunate because culturally, we were the ones who were connected to nature. And that was until a lot of the modernization happened. So it's very important that we connect back to our roots, because in connecting back to our roots, we're able to see we're able to come back to that power of nature and what it looks like. So what's the agenda to move cities towards more greener future? Number one, right, is working with citizens to do so. Me, you, everyone. I think what's very helpful, first of all, is for everyone because what we say is change begins from within. Yeah. It's a lot more difficult to get an entire city to change than it is for you to get yourself to change and then get your neighbor to change, right? And for us, what that looks like for us personally, right, is we started with this place as the garden. We've extended the garden also outside as well. So the street also now has a lot more plants that we've integrated a lot more plants in the street as well. So if you go down the street, there's a lot more plants. We're spreading that out as well, and then we're going to be working with. Yes, we're going to be working with all the neighbors, for example, on the streets, and saying, what does it look like for us to make this place a lot more green? Like, would you be interested in doing that? And a lot of times, I think, just coming back to Edwin's question, right, is one of the things that we're doing once rainy season comes is there's a particular tree called Rubia plumera. With Rubia plumeras, all you have to do is snap off a branch, stick it in the soil, and you get a new tree. Yes, like that's all you have to do. You just break a branch off and then you put it in the ground, and it turns into a tree itself. So basically, we're going to be snapping up branches and then just putting them in the ground, like around. And then people don't realize it that it's going to become a tree. And the beautiful thing is they will survive. It's called a Rubia plumera. Let me just write that for you. Confirm that that's the right name. I believe that that's the right name. So we Rubia, and they bring out these beautiful flowers that are either yellow, white, orange. That's just and they will grow. They will pretty much just grow by themselves. So they're pretty good. I think Fola said she's thinking of putting an association together, building a community of plant lovers. Yes, just plant lovers. Yes. We actually, funny enough, we actually don't have one. So if you're thinking of putting one together, we are very happy to join. Yeah. There are garden plant lover groups in Nigeria, but I think we've been so busy building things out on different levels that we haven't gotten the chance to do so. But I think community is definitely the next step to go in terms of doing this. So whoever's interested in putting a community together, we are very interested in participating, and we are very interested in louding it as much as possible. So, Paula, so you want us to do the work, but you don't want to join.
Just to follow.
You just want to follow. Okay. So what we can do though is we can create a community on what do you call it? We can create a community on Telegram. And I think we were thinking about doing that actually. We're thinking about starting a community. So I think what we can do is we can just layer that as well. So we will. So now that you said it, yes, we're going to do it. But we're going to create a community and then we'll share, so people can join as well. Yes. You've asked us to take responsibility, so we'll take responsibility. So yeah, so we're going to do that. So that's what we found, because once you can start that kind of community, right? I think, and it's a very good suggestion. So thank you for that. Because once you can start a community, right, you can now start sharing ideas and plans and ways to do so and ways to make a place greener. Yeah. Yes, okay, we're starting a community. So yes, look, at least something that's come out of this session, right? Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, please ask away. If not, we round this up. Okay, so while we're here, let me include the picture of the plantain so people, I don't know how this works. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to so people see what that looks like. Oh, how can participants join the community? So we're going to start a what do you call it, a Telegram group, really. First of all, then we'll share the link with AFRICANXT, who can then share the link out, and then everybody else can learn. But I think what we can do, yes, you can also follow our Instagram as well. So let's share our Instagram link with you. So when we create that community, you can join as well. I think I'm seeing Annie saying that she missed out on the session. So what we can do is we can give you for those who missed out, or for those who are, let's just give you a recap again, so that way everyone is pretty much on the same page. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I love it. Yes. So number one, right? Use what you have. Right? So use what you have is number one. And use what you have just in terms of more practical ways that you can start greening your community, right? Is to start with your place. Start greening your place first, because we learned the hard way. We try to actually start doing this outside without and we hadn't done ours first, and it was terrible. It didn't work. It didn't work. So the first thing, just from our own experience, is start with your place. And I think the first step is identify a space where plants can grow. That's the first step. So your own place now, for example, is it a window ledge? If it's a window ledge that you're working with, then you know that what you have to do is you have to have a flower pot to take care of your plants. You don't have to go out and buy an expensive flower pot or something like that. You can use anything. You can use a paint container, right? You can use a pot, a kettle. We use a drum. Like we have a talking drum. I don't know. I think Chine is going to get it on the wall. But we have a talking drum. Look at that. It's a talking drum, and it's growing it's growing a plant. It's going to sansevieria plant in it. So using what you have is very key, right? But first of all, identify the space that you want to. Well, or you can hire us to. Yes, you can hire us to do it. Yes, that's one way to do it as well. Thank you, Raquel. I think the second step really is so that's for so one is indoor. Start with indoor, right? So indoor, what space do you have that you can use? Then next, think about it from an outdoor point of view. Is there a space that you have within the house that you can use, right? Then use it. Yes, thank you, Ebun. Plant swapping is also a great way to do it, man. Plant swapping is a great way to do it. We've gotten a lot of our plants from, like a good number of our plants from the neighbor's space, for example, right? Like it's crazy the number of plants that we've gotten for free.
Sometimes, it helps to befriend the gardeners. So when they're just even chopping things
yes.
off, they're like, "Oh, you've chopped that up. Can I have that?" And they're like,
yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Then you take that and you plant it or propagate it, and you get yourself new plants. So definitely good point, everyone.
Yes. Like just make friends with the neighbors, man. Make friends with the gardeners around you. They usually will be cutting plants. And another way to do it, right? Another way to start for cheap, really, is what Chine said. Don't When you see plants that have been cut, they're not dead. A lot of people think that, oh, but this plant is cut, so it's dead. There's a lot of plants that will grow if you just stick them in water or stick them in the ground and then water them, and they will actually grow. I think what we're going to do is, and I love this session because this session is giving us more responsibilities. So what we're going to do is we're going to put together really a handbook for how to get started, really. So that's helpful for people. So the kind of plants, for example, that you can see, especially in Lagos, there are plants that you see that I've seen around in Lagos that all you just have to do is just like they're on the streets. All you have to do is just break a branch or take a little bit of them, and it will grow. And then you can basically propagate them and create more and more and more plants for yourself. So the art of propagating is a very important skill to learn if you want to start your own garden as well. Oh, another very quick one to do is, you have tomatoes. There's no way. If you're a Nigerian family, there's no way you don't have tomatoes at any point in time. Just take some tomatoes and just sprinkle it everywhere. I think Mohini can talk about this, but even at that place, just put tomatoes and you will find that it will grow. And then before you know it, you have more tomatoes as well. Tomatoes are super easy. Peppers are super easy. Sweet potatoes are super easy as well. What else again? Onions are super easy.
Yeah, and okra too, actually.
Okra is really good. And okra also has a very beautiful flower. So just as an ornamental plant, it's so good. So using those ones they're also very helpful ways. So starting with food crops are a good way to really get into it as well. Yeah. Pest control. Oh, what did they get attacked by? For that, Kemi, what did your plants get attacked by?
Yeah, it helps, because there are different things that can attack plants and there are different solutions to them.
Yeah.
One of the things that we had to battle was aphids. That's the enemy. Oh, that's aphids.
Aphids. Yes, that's aphids. So if you want to take care of aphids, here's what you do. Yes, all of that, right? Oh, okay, everyone is suggesting more. Yes, so there's you actually, it's not just soapy water. You get alcohol. So alcohol being what do you call it? Is it like ethanol or something like that, right? From a pharmacy, and then mix it with soapy water, and if you can, put it in a spray container, right? Put it in a spray container, and then just like mist your plant early in the morning or late in the evening, and that will take care of your aphid problem. We used to have a lot of aphids here. I mean, we still do actually. They come every season, every dry season. The seasonal, so they usually will come maybe during the dry season. So just get like a bottle, get ethanol, and then get water, soapy water. Like just use any soapy water, and you're good to go. And yes, Ebon just said aloe vera is a good one to grow as well. Ginger, yes, ginger is super easy, so that's very good to grow as well. Mint, mint is divine. Frame, yes, garlic, they're all easy places to start from. So Ebon, expect that we're going to work with you on this one because you're now also you're co-founder of this community. So welcome. Oh, you're welcome for Lakemi.
It's one of that for the tour. So.
Oh yeah, so now let's close this off with a tour as well. All right, yeah. Yes, it's a whole session. The fruits and veggies around us that we can begin to plant is a whole session. It's completely a whole session. So I'm going to have Chine go on this tour since I've been talking a whole lot. I'm thirsty.
Okay, so that's why. Let's look at
Oh, sorry. There you go. Okay. So this plant we picked up from the street. We plug it in there, as you can see. It's going fine. Yeah. Any plants, you will find a lot of the more you garden, the more you start to notice plants around you. And many times, a lot of the plants that you might just see on the street that look random, if you take them and put them in something in a vessel, you will see how it transforms the way it looks. And this plant, we legit, like Chine just picked it up on the street, and it's grown into this now, and they actually sell it. you will find that plant sellers sell it, but you will find that a lot of times you will find it for free. So as you can see, let's see. So this just one plant, just stuck it in there, and over time you can see what it is now. So a lot of times you just have to be patient. It's really about looking around for what it is that is available, and patience. Just know that whatever you're doing is a seed, and with time, it's gonna grow. It's always easy to look at this, and I mean, if we'd started and said, oh wow, like doesn't look like this yet, and because it doesn't look like this, we're not going to start. We'd never have gotten this. But in order for us to get to this level, we had to start. So just very important to remember that all it requires is for you to start. The moment you start, is the moment there's a future where you get a lot of growth. So let's see. So it's like to walk, and this is, as you can see, that's the plantain. Yeah, plantains are another very good one for you to have in your space, because it turns into a tree and then it gives you plantains. Yeah, it gives you plantains, and it has flowers, and the flowers have a lot of nectar. It's beautiful. Oh yeah, this is actually. You have the flowers? Okay. Yeah. So this is what a plantain flower looks like. And it has a capsule. So you break up the capsule, and the capsule has nectar really just inside it. So in case you've never seen a plantain flower, this is what it looks like. And yeah, so one of the things you can also do is really figure out inventive ways of doing things. For example, this is a lantern, but it's also a flower pot. And right now, what it has inside it is what's called an air plant. And air plants are plants that grow in air. They don't need soil. They just take the nutrients from the air, really. And as long as they have a little bit of water in the air, then they're fine. They grow. So just think about how you can use the things around you to create spaces for plants, and that always helps. And then also think about how you can switch plants during the seasons. These are called caladiums. As you can see them, during the dry season, they disappear. But once the rainy season is coming back, they pop back up again. So on this bed, we have this plants over here, which are lilies, but they only sprout during the dry season. They only have the flowers in the dry season. So once the season changes, one goes dormant and the other one comes alive. Once the season changes, this one goes dormant and this other one comes alive. So it's really about sort of figuring out how do you use the change in season to be able to have plants all grow in that same space, but without interrupting each other. So yeah, that's the garden. Any questions? So I think we're good. Yes. Are we still connected to the internet?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. So yeah, just think of it as a seed and just start. Like the best way to do this is to just start. The moment you start is the moment you're bound to have results. So just get started, and you will, without a doubt, have teachers for life. As Falake just said, good teachers of life lessons. Yes, you will have teachers
for life. So definitely. How are you attracting birds and other pollinators?
Oh, intentional about the plants that we have. Birds and other pollinators will come with the flowers. So, for example, the plantain tree is a very good way. So, if you really plant plantain trees, they're really good. The plantain tree is a very good way to bring in birds and bees. They will come to the plantain trees because that contains nectar. They're usually attracted to things that contain nectar. So, if you have plants that have nectar,
bright color
and bright colored plants as well, they will come. We will put together a short list of them for you as well. But I think at the end of the day, right, if there's anything to take away, right, use what you have, right? So you have a vessel, a kettle, something, a pot, use it.
Even a basket, you can see.
Use whatever you have. So start with that first. That can be very helpful. Use what you have. If you got tires, use the tires. And I'm sure that after this, people are going to be seeing tires everywhere now. So you see a tire, think about how you can use it to start. Use the tires around you, use the things around you that you have. Use the resources around you as well. You know, as everyone said, you have neighbors, you have friends, you have people that have plants. Ask them for a bit of their plant or like a stem or, what do you call it, a rhizome, something. And that's helpful to start with. But use what you have. But remember, in the process of doing so, always just follow that framework. You slow down, first of all, slow down to see around you and see what you can transform. Because there's a lot of spaces around you that you can transform. You know, if I told you we're going to turn this space into this, people wouldn't believe it, but it's what it is now because we took our time to do so. But slow down, give gratitude. So always start from a place of gratitude. See what you can use, see what you can work with. Never start from a place of doubt or fear, but start from a place of gratitude. And then take responsibility for making it happen. That's the most important aspect of it. Taking that responsibility will require doing the work. But honestly, a lot of the work and knowledge that you will learn will also come from YouTube. So use YouTube very wisely because that's what we use to learn this, YouTube. So yes, that's it.
Yeah. And please remember to take the poll.
Yes, and please remember to take the poll. And please remember to follow us on Instagram as well.
Yeah, Akanka Design. I think from there you should be able to find the rest of our stuff.
Yes.
And also, if you want to follow the studio, it's Akanka Studio 33. So yeah. I think we're good. There you go.
Where you are right now, just sessions, and then you just.
All right, okay. Are we good? No more questions from anyone? I think we can round the session up.
It's Chine, but Chine sounds good too.
Chine, I love it.
But Chine, I like that.
Yeah.
It's funny how
that's
those names. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Oh, so we have other sessions coming up on the main stage, and another session by 4:25 p.m. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please stay around for the upcoming sessions.
I believe we can leave now. All right, folks. Have yourself a lovely day.
Remember, slow down, give gratitude, and take responsibility.
And that's how we start designing one by one household at a time. One household at a time. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Do it.
Peace.
Yes, we're not forgetting the community. We're going to share that as well. 100% going to share that. Yes, we will.
Bye-bye.